by the professionals, and this will lead into collaborative authoring and more collaboration between the teachers. And recently I have been interested, besides open educational resources, also more in open educational practices like massive open online courses and Wikiversity. And I think that the real opportunities of open education lie there when we look forward and not just focus on the content, but on open learning communities.
Thanks very, very much. And I've put some links up to the Mill, which I agree is an excellent project, and also specifically to the open courses that George Stevens and Stephen Downs ran in recent years, CCK 09, 09 and 08, which I really do think are kind of challenging traditional modes of education in terms of not only is the content really available in these courses, but so is the expertise. So I think they really raise some challenging issues for us in formal education. Thanks very much for that. Okay, now I'd like to whip over to Europe and to Netherlands. So perhaps, Peter, if you could introduce yourself and say what your thoughts are on question 1. Thanks.
Yes, I would like to do that. Thank you very much for the invitation. I think this is could be a very useful meeting for all of us. I am, for those of you who don't know, with the Open University of the Netherlands, and we recently had a name change. It's now the Open University in the Netherlands. Don't ask me why we did this. I think it sounds rather funny, but anyway, that's what it is. At the Open University, I work with the Center for Learning Sciences and Technology, where I am a program director in a program that researches network learning for professional development. At the OU, we do have an open educational resources policy. We've had it for several years already. Actually, we got a little bit from the Hewlett grant also to work on this. And the idea is actually that the OU is going to drastically change its policies. And what we aim to do is make all our resources, which are almost all in Dutch, available as open educational resources for other universities and for secondary education in the Netherlands. However, we run into several problems, which actually is part of the third question that you mentioned. Those barriers are legal in part and have to do with financing as well. I'll say a little bit about that later on. With respect to the first of the 4 questions, what are the opportunities that I see? I see that, and that is perhaps slightly different than the other speakers so far, I see large opportunities for the use of open educational resources for non-formal learning and for lifelong learning. I think without open educational resources, those two new kinds of learning will not really take off. And I guess it's perhaps also very close to the original intention that MIT had when they put their resources online. Second, of course, I believe that there are big opportunities for increasing quality in formal education when universities start to collaborate on the production of open educational resources. And of course, that in itself is something which is worthwhile. Patrick mentioned that already. Opportunities for cross-university collaboration are provided by open educational resources, and I think it's an important vehicle for making sure that happens. And then finally, also in the context of formal learning, I think open educational resources should free up time for teachers and lecturers. Now, the danger, of course, of that is that we will suffer the next round of budget cuts because apparently these people don't have anything on their hands anymore. But of course, what it really should be used for is increasing the quality of the teaching and learning that we do. As far as the second question, so that is the key challenges to achieving this vision. I think
if you don't mind, I think we'll just do all the opportunities first and then come up back to you on question 2, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yes, great. Sure, no problem. So then I'm done.
Okay, thanks. That's brilliant. That's a really good summary, and we're getting some really nice different perspectives, which is what we were hoping by drawing together this international group. So next, could I call on Susan over in Canada? Again, if you could introduce yourself, Susan, although I don't think you need any introduction, and also say what your reflections are on question 1. Thanks.
Thanks, Grania, and it's lovely to be in this conversation. I'm Susan D'Antoni, and until recently I was heading the OER work at UNESCO that was largely based on creating an international community of interest, actually, for 2 purposes. First and foremost, for raising awareness on the basis that if you don't know about something, it's not potentially useful. And secondly, for capacity building. There we tried to develop resources like a toolkit for helping people think about OER and develop and so on. That work took place over a period of 4 years, and throughout that time we were always looking for a sustainable home for that community to continue to interact. And now I have moved to work with Athabasca University, which is Canada's open university. And Athabasca is hosting the community now. And I have an ongoing small grant from the Hewlett Foundation to relaunch the community work. So that's where we are right now. When I looked at this question, I had some of the similar comments that have already been made, but my position of starting was that open educational resources really does increase access to knowledge and to specific information, and that this is a public good. And secondly, that really it should be an important support to lifelong learning. I think it's quite clear you can look at the advantages for learners, and some of that has been discussed. Certainly, there is a high advantage in terms of non-formal education, independent learning, lifelong learning. For teachers and for institutions as well, there is the opportunity to increase quality, for teachers to focus more on the students and less on preparation of new courses when they can have access to other materials that have been prepared. And lastly, I think for the country, our societies are becoming more and more complex, and the issue of an informed citizenry is perhaps more and more difficult. And with increased access to information, perhaps we can meet this objective more effectively. In the end, if resources have been produced with funds from the public purse, it certainly does make sense that they be available to all the public. I think that's all I have to add at this point.
Really, really useful. Really great to get your perspectives and, of course, your reflections from the work that you did, particularly with UNESCO in terms of the community building. Excellent. So now I think we can go back to Andy Lane. So Andy, I hope you've managed to get your technical difficulties solved. And over to you again. If you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Okay, can you hear me okay to start with? Somebody's signal? Yep, good. That's much better. Sorry about earlier. Yes, I'm Andy Lane. I was formerly the director of Open Learn and getting that started. And I continue to be involved in open education resource work here in the UK through something called SCORE, the Support Centre for Open Resources in Education, and also through some European projects, in particular one with the European Association of Distance Teaching Universities on OER in HE. I think that I echo many of the things which have already been said about what OER offer, but I'd particularly like to pick up again what Patrick said about the openness of OER, offering opportunities for many different people in many different ways. I do think that open educational resources are not just about educational practices in higher education. They do have value in secondary and might even have for primary education, but they also, as has already been picked up by Peter and a bit by Susan, have these opportunities for supporting informal, non-formal and formal education in many ways. I say that in particular because within the OER-HE project, I'm leading a work package which is looking at the role of open education resources in widening participation in higher education. Now, there are a lot of issues in terms of saying what does widening participation mean, but the fact that there are the open education resources there means that people can use them in different ways. That obviously there are HE teachers that can use them, there are HE learners that can use them, and MIT were very surprised in their early days when they got so many sort of self-directed learners using their material when they expected it to be teachers at other institutions. But it also offers scope for bridging between higher education from sort of tertiary education back into secondary education. And so there's a way in which secondary school teachers, high school teachers can also use HE level material, but equally I think there's a great scope, and you're seeing that with the community colleges and sort of below in the States, where there's opportunities for secondary school teachers to develop and use resources which they don't necessarily always have the time and access to in any other way. Open education resources provide opportunities that are just not there at the moment, and even sort of commercial opportunities might be limited. And I think we also heard from Hans in Tallinn about how in other countries because they might not be using English and they have to have materials in different languages for use, then the opportunities open education resources have for having translations or some language-specific material that you won't get commercially or in any other way is immensely important and enables people to gain access to education resources with a higher education level or another. I'd also just say that the open education resources, if you look at it on an institutional basis, as already been pointed out, I think Patrick said, it does offer new ways of collaborating with and dealing with other institutions. I mean, under the SCORE, the Support Centre for Open Resources in Education, you have this teaching fellow program, which is taking people from other English universities as well as a few people from the OU, looking at the actual application of open educational resources. And some of those projects are about engaging with different communities, different types of either work-based communities, employers, or the voluntary sector, and also being able to include them in the shaping of educational programs and practices which might be at higher education level, but it might be